This video is Remix for Hackathons. We'll be covering an intro to the Remix interface, the Learnith plugin, sharing and saving in Remix, importing, debugging, deploying, and demoing. Let's get started. Here is the Remix interface. Here's the main panel. Here's the side panel. And here's the icon panel. Here's the plugin manager, so you can change plugins, add plugins, deactivate plugins. Here's the link to the settings. Here's the terminal, and down here is the console. This is the plugin manager, where you can activate plugins, deactivate plugins, and find out some more information about what is in the plugins. When you're in the File Explorer and you right-click on a file, you'll get a pop-up menu with lots of interesting operations you can perform on files and folders. Now we'll go over learning in Remix. Here, to get to the Learnith plugin, either go to the plugin manager by clicking over here and get to the plugin manager, or you can go on the Home tab over here and you can open up one of these tutorials in the Learn section. If you click over here, you'll get to see all of the Learnith tutorials. This is all of the Learnith tutorials. There's some intro tutorials for Remix and Solidity, intermediate level, and more advanced level tutorials. Here's the Solidity beginner course. And these are taken with examples from Solidity by Example. It's a step-by-step learning platform. So you can, you'll be learning, and then there'll be some assignments, and then you can perform what the assignment says to do in the Solidity file over here, and then get your answer checked. And also you can see your answer. To learn Remix on the fly, you often have to go to the documentation. To find the documentation about each plugin, go to the top of the plugin, and then click down this caret, and you'll see a link to the documentation. Let's go over importing in Remix. There are files you want to import for editing, and then there are dependencies. Those are files that you don't want to edit. Remix works like other frameworks. So if you want to import a library or dependency from npm, you use an import statement like this. GitHub or any website, if you want to import through HTTPS, you'd use this kind of import statement. And if you want to import a local file, you'd use just the import statement with the path to the local file. To help with your import statements, the Remix editor has autocomplete on imports. It will autocomplete the entire OpenZeppelin library, Uniswap library, and will autocomplete all local files. There are several different ways of bringing files into Remix for editing. Here's one way. On the Home tab, go to the Load From section, and here you can load from GitHub, from a gist, from IPFS, or from HTTPS. Another way of getting files into Remix is to use a workspace template. In Remix, projects are divided into workspaces. Let's make a new workspace. When you click that plus button, or go to the hamburger to select new workspace, you'll get this modal, and you can choose these different workspaces. And when you choose an OpenZeppelin ERC20, 721, or 1155 template, you'll get the opportunity to put in these additional features. And when you select those, in the File Explorer, these will be brought in. And you can then see that the dependencies from these files will load. Entire repos can be brought into Remix through cloning. In the hamburger menu in the File Explorer, click that, and you'll get a menu where you can select clone. Then a modal will come up, and you put the URL of the repo that you want to clone. You can also use the OpenZeppelin wizard by going to wizard.openzeppelin.com, and you'll basically have a similar interface to what the OpenZeppelin template is in Remix. And then that will be brought in when you click the Open in Remix button over here. It'll be brought into Remix in the code sample workspace. You can also grab verified contracts from Etherscan by going to the Etherscan repository of verified contracts, selecting a contract, and then just swapping out etherscan.io for remix.ethereum.org, and that contract will be brought in the editor and will be made in the Etherscan code sample workspace. You can also bring files in from cookbook.dev. .dev is a large repository of smart contracts, and when you select one, you can edit it in Remix. In Remix, it's essential to know where you're saving your files. It's not like a Google Doc. There's no user accounts on a Remix server, so you have to know where they're being saved. Out of the box, Remix saves them in local storage, which is easy, but if your browser crashes, you could lose your work. So it's recommended to also push to an external Git repo. You could also use RemixD to save files on your hard drive. RemixD is an NPM package, when run from command line, will share a specified folder on your hard drive with Remix. This is a workspace in Remix that does not have Git associated with it. This one does have Git associated, and you can see the Git icon in the workspace select box. Let's talk about RemixD again. To get it going, go to the workspace select box and select Connect to localhost. You'll get the modal and with instructions about how to download the npm module for RemixD and how to get it going. There's a link to the documentation there. Once you get RemixD installed, and you have it in your terminal, cd into the directory you want to share, and then run the command remixd. Let's go over techniques for collaboration in Remix. Well, we went over cloning, but this is how you do it again. Go to the hamburger menu, hit clone, and get the clone modal. And to manage Git branches in Remix, in the File Explorer, at the very bottom, there's a name of the current branch. And when you click that, kind of modal comes up and you can create new branches or select the branch you want to use. Basic Git operations are managed in the plugin called dgit. To get dgit really working, if you go to the GitHub settings panel, the accordion panel, it says that you'll need to put in your Git settings. These are managed in the settings panel of Remix. So go down to open the settings panel and then input those. And then you can see the changes you've made in dgit, in the dgit panel from your editing. You can improve these changes and push to the remote repo. Let's go over diff. When you made a change, click on the changes. You'll see the diff between the old and the new. If you've got RemixD going and you're using Git and you're pushing to an external repo, then just manage Git on your hard drive and not through Remix. To make a gist is a great way of getting help via a URL. To make a gist in Remix in the File Explorer, right-click and go to Publish File or Folder to Gist, and then the URL of the gist will appear. You will probably need to have your GitHub settings put into the settings panel of Remix. When working in teams, you're also going to need to be able to explain and justify your code. So you should be commenting your code with NatSpec. And with NatSpec, you can use ethdoc, so you can generate documentation. And you can also generate UML diagrams in Remix. Here's some code, some NatSpec comments in it. NatSpec comments get compiled with your code and get saved in the artifacts folder. Then go to the plugin manager and search for ethdoc, and you'll get a couple plugins to activate Generator in the viewer. And then when you compile your code, you can click the Publish button and your comments will be turned into documentation of your contract. Here's some code with some NatSpec comments in it. Here's some code with some NatSpec comments in it. Is specialized comments that get compiled with your code and get saved in the compiled artifact. Here's some code with some NatSpec comments in it. NatSpec comments get compiled with your code and get stored in the compiled code's artifact. When working with others, it's always nice to clean up your code. Actually, it's always good to clean up your code. So let's show you how to do that. When working with others, it's always nice to clean up your code. Well, actually, it's always nice to clean up your code, even if you're working by yourself. I'll show you how to do it. In the editor, when you right-click, you'll get the pop-up menu, and you'll see the option to format code. You can also use the keyboard shortcut. For linting, activate the sol hint linter. Actually, soon the sol hint linter is going to be a keyboard shortcut by right-clicking on the file in the File Explorer. Speaking of shortcuts, there are a number of shortcuts in Remix. To get them, close all the tabs in the editor and you'll see this panel which will tell you all of the shortcuts. So what do you do when your teammates are using Hardhat or Truffle or Foundry and you're using Remix? Well, here's some techniques for compiling and deploying. When you're working with a Hardhat project, well, first you gotta share the Hardhat project folder with Remix via RemixD, and then in the Solidity compiler, you'd select the Hardhat compilation box, enable Hardhat compilation box. This is where it is in the Solidity compiler. Now, what this does is it creates the remix-compiler config file, and then Hardhat can read that and know what the compiler settings Remix had put in. Deployment side, if you're in the deploy and run plugin, you can grab whatever compilation is produced by Hardhat or Truffle or Foundry. In this case, this one was compiled by Remix, and in this one, it was compiled by Hardhat. So your teammates or you could be developing your project mostly in Hardhat or Truffle or Foundry, and then once you've compiled, you could bring the compilation result into Remix for deployment. And that's cool because deploying in Remix is straightforward. You just need to have a browser wallet like MetaMask set up, and deployment is ready to go. Another great tool in Remix is the transaction recorder. With it, you can share the state of your contracts. So the transaction recorder is towards the bottom of the deploy and run plugin. It's over here. Here's an expanded version of it when you click down the caret. With it, you can save transactions, and then these get saved as a JSON file. And if you give your teammates this JSON file and your source code, they can run these transactions in their Remix environment. One thing that's really annoying when you're coding is setting the state of the contract. You can set the state with a script in Remix. So you make a script that sets the state, and then you code, and then you run the script to see if your contract is working, and then code some more, and then update the script, and then it will set the state when you run the script. But now there's also a button to compile and run the script. You connect a script to the contract with some NetSpec comments. Just like Hardhat, Remix has a console log. So when you put the console.log in a Solidity file, you can see the result when the transaction is run in the terminal. Also, you're probably going to have to be deploying to local dev chains you never heard of, and as a result, you'll need to have some links to L2 bridges. I'll go over that now. So to deploy to a Hardhat, Ganache, or Anvil Foundry chain, first you got to get the chain going locally, and then in deploy and run, go down to the dev Hardhat provider or Ganache provider or Foundry provider. To get the specs of a chain, in the top of deploy and run, select the this plug over here, and that will take you to chainlist.org, where you can you can search on the chain, and then it will input those specs into your browser wallet. To get a link to an L2 bridge for the particular L2, go to this link over here when you've selected L2 Optimism or L2 Arbitrum in the environments pull down of deploy and run. Sometimes you need the same address on multiple chains. So using the contract deployer plugin, you can do this. To find it, go to the plugin manager and activate the contract deployer plugin. Now let's move to the front end. You're going to need to be able to grab the ABI. And to do that, in the Solidity compiler at the bottom there, if you click the copy ABI button, you will copy the ABI. And of course, you're going to need to show the judges. So one technique is just to use the Remix interface. So here, in this example, you can have your contract here in the editor and have it deployed, and just use the interface here to input values to prove to your judges that your contract is working. You can also show the judges using one-click DApp. To do that, first you'd deploy to a public testnet and copy the address of the deployed contract. Then you activate one-click DApp in the plugin manager, and then in the one-click DApp on the side panel, you input over here the contract's address, and then you click the Generate DApp button, and then you'll get the address on one-click DApp, and then you go to that address on one-click DApp, and there you have a kind of clean interface to show how your contract is working, so you can hit the different functions in your contract. And that's it for this version of Remix for Hackathons. Please get in touch on Twitter, Medium, or join our Discord server. If you'd like more videos like this, please subscribe.